Welcome to Trial Talk, insights from experienced New York trial attorney Michael Joseph.
Welcome back to Trial Talk with attorney Michael Joseph. I am your host, Kevin Rosenquist. Today we're going to talk about bike accidents in New York City. Who's at fault, who pays, and what cyclists need to know. Michael, welcome back. Good to see you.
Likewise. How are you?
I'm good. You know, last episode you kind of touched on it a little bit when we were talking about fault and things like that. So let's just start from the beginning. If a cyclist is hit by a car in New York, is it pretty much always the car's fault, would you say?
Well, it really depends on how the accident happens, right? Definitely, New York law imposes on the drivers of any automobile the obligation to drive in a manner that's it provides reasonable protection to bicyclists. What does that mean? That means if you're driving, you have to keep a lookout for bicyclists. You can't just change lanes. There might be a bicyclist in the area. You have to keep a proper lookout. Now, especially in New York City, they have bike lanes. Now, bike lanes have special significance. Why? Because in bike lanes, bicyclists have the right of way in the bike lane. So if a vehicle is making a left over a bicycle lane, the driver of that automobile really has the responsibility to check their mirrors, check behind them, in front of them, make sure there's no oncoming bicyclists, and they really have to wait until it's safe to make a turn. Most of the bicycle accidents we see in New York City are vehicles either making lefts across a bike lane, or where the where the bicyclists ride, or cars changing lanes and hitting the bicyclists. And the most common thing we see or we hear from the other side, or from people who hit bicyclists, is "I didn't see him," or "I didn't see the bicyclist." Well, just because you didn't see a bicyclist doesn't mean you're not at fault. Okay?
Yeah. Did you check your blind spot?
Yeah. You didn't see him doesn't mean you can hit him. Yep. You have a responsibility as a driver to see what there is to be seen, right? And if you should have seen the bicyclist, and really there's no reason why you shouldn't see a bicyclist if you're driving a car, right? If you're driving a car and you hit a bicyclist because you didn't see them, and you made a lane change or you made a turn into the path of a bicyclist, yes, you're at fault. I mean, so are there occasions where a bike hits a car or goes into a car? I'm sure, but those are really the rare occurrences.
We've all driven on roads with bicyclists, and we've seen, obviously, you see plenty of cars do stupid things. Occasionally, you see bicyclists do stupid things. How impactful are the rules of the road to bicyclists in the terms of legal cases?
Well, in New York State in general, cars have the obligation to keep a proper lookout and watch for bicyclists, and to operate their vehicles in such a way as to not endanger the safety of a bicyclist. Right. Here in New York City, especially in Manhattan, we have city bikes. We have deliveries on bicycles. Uber Eats guys are all on bicyclists. Seamless drivers, DoorDash. All these guys, there's bicyclists everywhere. There's now e-bikes everywhere. There's even electric scooters everywhere. They share the road with us. So bicyclists have the right to use the roads, and people who are driving, be it trucks, be it cars, even other scooters or e-bikes, have the responsibility to operate their vehicles in such a way as to not hit a bicyclist.
Speaking of e-bikes and scooter riders, are they covered under the same bicycle accident laws as a cyclist?
Okay, so it gets a little complicated with e-bikes, for example.
Okay.
Under New York law, a motorcycle is there's a distinction, okay? In terms of ability to sue, if you're hit by a car and the car is at fault, you can sue for damages, for pain, for suffering, and for your injuries, regardless of whether you're on an e-bike, regular bike, scooter, e-scooter, whatever. Okay, so in that respect, everybody who's injured because of a car accident has the right to sue. Where it gets a little funky is New York law excludes motorcyclists from what's called no-fault benefits. That means if a car hits a bicyclist, the insurance company for the bicyclist has to provide, the insurance company for the car has to provide the bicyclists no-fault benefits, which includes medical benefits and wage replacement benefits if they can't work. However, if you're on a motorcycle, you don't get that benefit. You have to go through your own health insurance program, your own health insurance company. And if you have disability, then you can get a disability, but you're not entitled to no-fault benefits if you're on a motorcycle. The question now that's emerging with these e-bikes and with these scooters is it a bicycle an e-bike, or is it a scooter, or is it a motorcycle? And a lot of it tends to have to do with the speed that the bicyclist or the e-bike is capable of reaching. In general, if a bike can reach less than 35 miles per hour, or if an e-bike can reach less than 35 miles an hour, it's considered a scooter or a bike, and the bicyclist or person on the scooter is still entitled to no-fault benefits from the car that hit them. If the e-bike or scooter has the capacity to go above 35 miles an hour, then it's considered a motorcycle. And in that case, they're not entitled to no-fault benefits. They have to go through their own insurance company. But where it gets even a little more convoluted, just because New York likes to make nothing easy, if you get no-fault benefits, you have to prove you have a serious injury to be able to sue, which means a fracture or a disfigurement or some objectively verified injury that either causes limitations in how you use your body, or if you can't work or go to school for 90 days after the accident. You have to kind of satisfy one of those categories if you get no-fault benefits, if you're on a bike or a scooter that's not a motorcycle. However, if you're on a vehicle that qualifies as a motorcycle, it doesn't matter what kind of injury you have because you have no what's called threshold, okay? Because that's sort of the trade-off that the legislature came up with, about 50 years ago, that in New York, you get no-fault benefits, but you can only sue for certain types of injuries. However, where you don't get no-fault benefits, then you can sue and you don't have to prove any kind of level of serious injury. You can sue for almost any injury. So to break it down, if you're on a bicycle or a scooter that goes under 35 miles an hour, you're considered a bike or a scooter. You get no-fault benefits and you can sue if the other vehicle's at fault, but you also have to prove that you have a quote-unquote serious injury. However, if you're on an e-bike or scooter that goes over 35 miles an hour or has the capability to go over that speed, even if you weren't going that fast at the time of the accident, then you're considered to be on a motorcycle and you don't get no fault. You have to go through your own insurance. But the flip side is you can sue for even minor injuries.
Okay. So I have a random one for you. I've got a scooter myself. It's a 49cc scooter. Technically it doesn't go above 35, but I've made some modifications, so now it does. Does the court take that into consideration? Did they look at that stuff or not really?
I haven't seen a case come down specifically on that yet. I'd
cool.
say it would probably be, you could argue both ways. You could at one point say it's an e-bike itself because by its manufacturer specifications, it doesn't go over 35. However, the flip side could be it can also be a motorcycle because this one, in fact, does go over 35 because it's been adjusted. We had some specific modifications done to it.
Yeah. Okay. I was just curious. What does New York law say about right of way when it comes to bicycle lanes? Does it ever side with the driver in certain situations, or is it pretty much bicycle lane right of way goes to the bicycle?
The bicycle lanes are there for a reason, to provide the bicyclists a safe area to operate and to drive the bikes. So whenever a car is in the bike lane or comes into the bike lane, they have to make sure that they don't hit the bicyclist or they don't do anything that endangers the safety of the bicyclist. We even had an interesting case where this came up where delivery guys threw boxes who were unloading a truck into the bicycle lane. The bicyclist hit the boxes, and went flying, and we were still successful in suing the truck because they dropped the boxes in the bicycle lane, and that area is reserved for bicyclists. So if you're a bicyclist and you hit something that was thrown into the bike lane by a delivery truck, you can sue. The truck's at fault. If you're a bicyclist and you get hit by a car that's turning across the bicycle lane, you can still sue because the truck or the vehicle or whatever vehicle is turning across the bicycle lane has to make sure it's safe for them to cross the bicycle lane before they make the turn. Mm-hmm. And certainly under no circumstances should a non-turning vehicle be in the bicycle lane.
Are there situations when a cyclist could be partially at fault? And if so, does that change how the case goes?
There are theoretically if a bicycle leaves the bicycle lane or if a bicyclist turns into a car, they could potentially be at fault. However, if you're a bicyclist going straight in your lane of travel and another vehicle comes into your lane, the vehicle's at fault.
Yeah.
Even, for example, if you're a bicyclist going straight and a car door opens, here we get what they call doored. One of the questions our bicycle accident attorneys get asked is, "Can I sue if I was doored?" And the answer is yes. Why? Because a vehicle that's parked, even that's about, and you have somebody, an occupant who's about to exit the vehicle, they are still responsible to make sure it's safe for them to open the door. If they're in the area where bicycles travel or a bike lane, they have to make sure it's safe for them to open the door before they do it, and that they're not going to impact the bicyclists or endanger bicyclists when they do it. We've had those cases too. We've actually won summary judgment just on papers on cases where bicyclists have been endured. We even won one against the police department not so long ago, where police officers parked responding to a call, and they opened the door in the bike lane and hit our client, and we went flying. Definitely, whoever in general, our bicycle lawyers know that operators of vehicles have a responsibility to take steps to avoid injuring bicyclists. And if they're careless and they injure a bicyclist, the bicyclist can sue.
Yeah, I've known enough people in my life who've gotten doored before, and I can tell you that when I'm riding a bike and there's cars alongside, it makes me nervous because it doesn't take long to just poke your head out or look in your rearview mirror or your side mirror and make sure no one's there. But a lot of people don't do it, and it always kind of terrifies me that a door is going to pop open and I'm going to go flying over my handlebars.
And it unfortunately happens, and a lot of people have been seriously injured from being doored.
Yep.
So if you have a bad injury because you were doored, definitely call a lawyer. Why? Because even if the vehicle wasn't in operation, you're still entitled to no fault benefits because it arose out of the use. Your injury arose out of the use of an automobile.
When it comes to food deliveries, couriers, things like that, does the company that the bicyclist is working for ever involved in a suit?
Well, they're involved in a suit to the extent that if they're an employee, they're entitled to workers' compensation. But most food delivery guys, especially in New York City, are characterized as independent contractors when they're on bicycles.
Okay.
So if they're a direct employee, then the owner or the company may get involved because the employee is entitled to workers' compensation benefits. But in general, they're usually independent contractors, and it goes through the vehicle's no fault. And certainly, there's usually no basis of liability that to hold the company or the employer liable for the injuries of a bicyclist.
Okay, gotcha. And what evidence do you recommend that a cyclist gather after an accident, assuming that they're not hurt and need to go to the hospital? What kind of stuff do you say, get this right away if you can?
Definitely call the police. You want a police report. You want to document the incident happened. You certainly want the plate number of the occupant of the car. You want the driver's license of whoever was operating the car. And definitely take pictures. You want to be able to show where your bike ended up in relation to the car. If there's damage to the car from the impact, you want to be able to document that. And if you're not able to do it, you can ask a bystander to take pictures, because obviously photographs of what happened right at the scene are always the best evidence there is. Certainly, whatever a police officer records in their police report is also potentially evidence that could benefit you down the line.
What if if there's an accident between a driver and a car and a bike, and the driver flees? What options does the rider have in that situation?
It depends in part on whether the car was stolen, and two, if the bicyclist can get a plate number, snap a picture of the plate. If they can snap a picture of the plate or they can get a plate number, we can identify the vehicle and who the owner is and bring a claim for damages against the owner of the vehicle. In cases where you can't identify the vehicle, if you have your own vehicle in the household, even if you're on a bicycle, your own insurance company, either for you or for anybody that you live with, has to provide what's called uninsured or unidentified motorist benefits. So what happens is your own insurance company or the insurance company of anybody in your household will then essentially step into the shoes of that driver and provide the benefits that your policy that policy has available to it. So certainly you'd be entitled to the no fault benefits, which is having your medical bills paid. But then in terms of damages, what you could get from that insurance company, it really goes by, one, the severity of your injuries, and two, what the policy limits are. So in other words, you can recover up to the uninsured motorist policy limits of the insurance company that covers your personal vehicle or any vehicle in the household.
Okay. Oh, that's interesting. All right.
Now, what happens if you don't have a vehicle in the household when you're
Yeah.
a bicyclist, right? So if your bicyclist hit by a car that flees the scene, you have what's called a right to what's called MVAC benefits, which is Motor Vehicle Accident Indemnification Corp benefits. And it's basically a state fund that provides the minimum benefits to people who are injured in cases where cars hit them and flee or can't be identified. But
Okay.
for any either uninsured motorist benefit application or for MVAC benefit application, you need to prove that you contacted the police within 24 hours of the accident. So earlier we were talking about what steps do you take if you were involved in a accident with a car that fled the scene. The first thing you always want to do is call the police. That way you have a record of the accident having occurred, because you can have a perfect liability case, but if you don't have a police report or even a call to the police or a call to 911 on your phone, then you don't have a case. You're just ineligible for the benefits. Obviously, there's exceptions. For example, if the police came and took you to the hospital, and you don't have the report right away, you can get it. But if there's no police contact whatsoever within 24 hours, you don't have a case.
Does that same what we just talked about with insurance apply if if you get hit by if a cyclist gets hit by a car and the driver has like basic minimum coverage, but the damages are fairly significant, or the monetary amount that someone would want is fairly significant? Are you still able to do that underinsured motorist through someone of your household?
Okay, so that's not uninsured motorist. That's supplemental underinsured motorist benefits.
Okay.
So what happens is if you get hit by a car which has bare minimum insurance, right, and it's not a car that's being used in the course of a business like an Uber or a Lyft, because in those cases you can go after the Uber or Lyft or the employer if it's someone working. In a case where a bicyclist gets hit by somebody who has minimal insurance and they have severe injuries or significant injuries, what they could do is they can take the insurance company's basic limits and settle with the insurance company, and then go after the higher limits of their own insurance policy or any insurance policy of someone they live within the same household at the time of the accident. That's called either SUM or supplemental underinsured motorist benefits.
Cool. Well, thank you very much for joining us on Trial Talk with Michael Joseph. Hopefully, if you're a cyclist and you found us, then you got some really good information here. And if you or someone you know was injured while cycling, visit newyorktriallawyers.org, and you can talk with Michael and his team and find out what your rights are. Also, don't forget to subscribe and leave us a review. We very much appreciate it. Michael, always appreciate your time. Thanks so much for being here.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for watching. Be sure to hit that like and subscribe button and leave us a review in the comments.